You ever get that feeling, like something's just off? You're in a conversation, they're smiling, nodding, maybe even saying all the right things, but deep down something twists in your gut. It's not loud, it doesn't scream, but it whispers, and it doesn't go away. I used to ignore it, chalk it up to overthinking or insecurity. I'd tell myself I was being paranoid, that people didn't really mean harm, not when they acted so nice. But that quiet ache kept showing up, especially around certain people. And I realized it wasn't paranoia. It was awareness. What finally broke through the fog was a moment so small I almost missed it. Someone I considered a friend made another one of those jokes, the kind that leaves you laughing on the outside, but shrinking on the inside. Oh, look at you, all deep and philosophical again. Who hurt you this time? It was said with a grin, a nudge, that playful tone. But my chest tightened, and I thought, why does this feel like a slap dressed as a pat on the back? That's when I started noticing the pattern, the way they always poked fun at the same parts of me, the way their sarcasm zeroed in on the things I held close. My sensitivity, my thoughts, my progress. I'd try to bring it up gently, only to be met with, geez, relax, it's just a joke. Or worse, you're too sensitive, toughen up. And for a while, I believed that I was the problem, that if I were stronger, things wouldn't sting, but no. That's the trick, isn't it? That's how it seeps in, disguised as affection. It's like someone handing you a rose with a blade inside. The hurt is subtle, almost poetic in its cruelty, and when you finally start to question it, you're gaslit into silence. Carl Jung talked about the shadow, the hidden, rejected parts of ourselves that we unconsciously project onto others. I started to wonder if that's what I was seeing. These jokes weren't random. They were barbed projections, pieces of their own shame, jealousy, or fear thrown at me with a smile. And somehow I was supposed to thank them for it. I began asking myself harder questions. Why does this person need to tear down what matters to me? Why are they always the first to laugh at my vulnerability, but the last to honor my growth? And why do I keep them close, even when their presence makes me doubt myself? That was the first shift, the realization that not all smiles mean safety, that not all friends are for you. Some are with you, but not for you. And that distinction changes everything. I started listening more to that quiet voice inside, the one I used to ignore, the one that said, "This doesn't feel right." I gave it space. I gave it trust. And slowly I started peeling back the layers. I stopped laughing at jokes that hurt. I stopped explaining my boundaries like they were up for negotiation. I stopped pretending that being polite was more important than being real. And you know what? It was lonely at first. Saying no to people who felt familiar, even if they hurt you, creates this strange emptiness, like a room you've always lived in suddenly has less furniture. But in that emptiness, something new grows. Space, peace, self-respect. That moment with the joke wasn't the end. It was the beginning. The moment I stopped gaslighting myself and started believing what my body, my soul, had been trying to tell me all along. Not everyone who stands beside you is cheering for you. Some are just waiting for the moment to pull you back. But here's the good news. Once you see it, really see it, you can't unsee it. And that's when your healing begins. There were other moments too, smaller ones I used to brush off without a second thought. Like when I was working toward something important, something that mattered to me, and someone close would forget to mention a key detail or give me advice that subtly nudged me in the wrong direction. I'd chalk it up to bad luck or innocent mistakes, but over time those moments started stacking up. Always in the most crucial times, always when I needed support the most. I remember once preparing for a job opportunity I was really excited about. I told a friend about it weeks in advance. I even asked if they'd heard anything from someone we both knew who worked there. They smiled, said no, and changed the subject. Later, I found out they'd known about a shortcut, a contact, an opening, something that could have helped me. They just didn't say. "Oh, I must have forgotten," they told me casually, like it didn't matter. But it did. It mattered more than they knew, because it wasn't the first time. It was just the clearest. And the thing is, people like that, they don't usually show up waving red flags. They show up with kindness, with concern, with good intentions. Their sabotage is wrapped in silence, cloaked in care. It's not what they say, it's what they don't do. The encouragement that never comes, the help that's always just out of reach, the timing that always slips through your fingers, and somehow they're always just too late. Jung once wrote that when a person can't deal with their own failures or envy, they unconsciously project it onto others. And sometimes that projection becomes a need to see you stumble, to keep you close but not too bright, not too bold, because your growth reminds them of their own stuckness. The cruel irony is that they might not even know they're doing it. It's not always evil. Sometimes it's just unresolved pain, twisting quietly under the surface, acting out without consent. And you, if you're not careful, end up living under that shadow, rearranging your life to avoid triggering their discomfort without even knowing why. I started to notice it not just in one person, but in several. Friends who never showed up when it counted. Family members who gave me advice that pulled me away from what I wanted, then said, I was only trying to help. Colleagues who made harmless mistakes that set me back again and again. At first, I thought I was being harsh, too sensitive, paranoid. That's how it works. They make you doubt your gut until you don't even trust your own experience. But when I finally paused and looked at the pattern, it was undeniable. These weren't isolated moments, they were a system built on small, seemingly innocent cracks, forgotten calls, subtle discouragements, missed chances that together weakened my foundation. It wasn't the hurricane that hurt me, it was the drip. So I stopped making excuses. I stopped telling myself that people meant well when their actions told another story. I started believing my own eyes, my own heart. And when I did, something shifted. The world didn't suddenly become safer, but it became clearer. I could see who was really standing with me and who was simply standing near me. And that clarity, it's everything. Because once you know, you can choose. You can choose who to trust, who to open to, who to keep at a distance. And most of all, you can choose yourself over loyalty, over guilt, over the need to be liked. Because your peace, your progress, is worth protecting, always. You know what's even trickier? When it stops being about sabotage and starts becoming a silent competition. That shift is so subtle, so insidious, you barely notice it until you realize you're constantly shrinking yourself around certain people just to keep the peace. I used to think I was imagining it, that it was just a weird coincidence. Every time I shared something I was proud of, a moment of joy or progress, there'd be someone who would immediately pivot the conversation back to themselves, not in a way that was obvious. No, it was always wrapped in something light. Oh, that's awesome. I actually just... Followed by their own story, their own success, their own quiet flex. At first, I told myself it was fine. People are allowed to share. But it wasn't sharing, it was eclipsing. It was taking my joy and subtly making it smaller, redirecting the light every time it landed on me. And the worst part? I didn't notice how much I adjusted myself to it, how I stopped talking about the things that made me proud, how I downplayed good news, tucked away my excitement, even questioned whether my progress was worth mentioning at all. I didn't want to make anyone feel bad. I didn't want to come across as boastful or too much, but really I was just scared of being met with indifference, or worse, resentment disguised as politeness. Carl Jung said that what we reject in ourselves, we project onto others, and I started to see that this wasn't about me. My joy, my growth, they weren't wrong, they were just mirrors. Mirrors reflecting back to others the things they couldn't yet accept in themselves. And instead of facing that reflection, they tried to smudge the glass. It's a strange kind of loneliness, being surrounded by people who smile at your light, but secretly want it dimmed, who clap with their hands but not their hearts, who turn every shared victory into a silent scorecard. That realization hit me harder than I expected. It made me question so many dynamics. Conversations I once thought were harmless now carried a different weight. I could hear the edge behind the compliments. I could feel the subtle tension beneath the "I'm happy for yous." And once you feel that, it's impossible to unfeel it. I think what hurt the most wasn't the competition itself. It was the intimacy of it. These were people I loved, people I rooted for, people I thought were rooting for me. And maybe they were in their own limited way. But there's a difference between being happy for someone and being happy with them. One lifts you both, the other keeps one above. So I started stepping back. Quietly, without drama, I stopped forcing conversations that drained me. I stopped seeking validation from people who only knew how to measure. I stopped begging for space where I had to earn my right to exist. And you know what started happening? I felt lighter. I felt freer. Not because the world got kinder, but because I stopped negotiating my joy. I gave myself permission to shine. Even if someone nearby squinted, I learned that not everyone is meant to come with you. Some people are only comfortable with the version of you that doesn't threaten their narrative. And when you grow, when you rise, when you stop apologizing for your light, they either rise with you or they step back into their shadow. That's not your burden to carry. You don't owe anyone your silence just to soothe their discomfort. Your joy isn't arrogance. Your success isn't selfish. Your voice isn't too loud. It's time you stopped dimming for people who refuse to brighten. And if that means being alone for a little while, so be it. I'd rather be alone in truth than surrounded by shadows pretending to clap. It gets even harder when those shadows don't just compete, they pretend to care. That kind of disconnect can really mess with your head, because now it's not sarcasm or rivalry you're dealing with. It's absence disguised as support. And that's the most confusing part, because you're not being actively hurt. You're just constantly not being held. I remember the day I really felt it. I had something big going on, a milestone, something I'd worked toward for months. I told a few close people, and one of them, someone I genuinely thought would be the first to cheer, just brushed it off. Not with cruelty, not with mockery, just a distant, "Oh, nice," and a quick change of subject. No warmth, no real energy behind the words. Just empty noise, like a voicemail from someone who couldn't be bothered to call. And the thing is, that person would have sworn up and down they were supportive. They probably believed it. But what I needed wasn't words. It was presence. It was care that didn't need to be asked for. And once I saw the gap between what they said and what they actually gave, I couldn't unsee it. Jung called it ego dissociation. This inner split where someone can't face their own uncomfortable feelings, so they emotionally detach. They wear the mask of the good friend, the supportive partner, but they're never really with you. Their body's there, but their spirit's elsewhere, probably guarding its own wounds. And when you're the one on the receiving end of that kind of relationship, you start to second-guess everything. You wonder if you're expecting too much. You tell yourself maybe it's just not a big deal. You even try to meet them halfway, make it easier for them to show up. carry the emotional weight they were never willing to hold. But all that does is teach you to settle, to accept silence when you need a voice, to accept a ghost when you need a home. I've been there. I stayed in those kinds of connections far too long, the ones where the absence hurt more than any fight ever could, where their lack of effort chipped away at my self-worth, one forgotten moment at a time. Where I told myself they're just busy or that's just how they are, because facing the truth felt lonelier than clinging to the illusion. But eventually, I had to ask the real question. If someone says they care but never shows up when it matters, do they really care? Or do they just like the idea of being close to you without the responsibility of actually being present? That question broke something in me, and then it built something stronger. Because when I stopped chasing connection that was always half there, I made room for people who were all in. People who didn't just show up when it was convenient, but when it was hard. People who listened without trying to fix, who celebrated without making it about them, who didn't flinch when I cried or retreat when I succeeded. And maybe the most important shift was this. I stopped needing everyone to show up. I started showing up for myself. I stopped expecting applause from people who were too busy clapping for themselves. I stopped asking for warmth from people still frozen in their own pain. And in that space, I found my own center. Quiet, steady, enough. Sometimes the most painful realization is this. They didn't hurt you out loud. They hurt you by not being there at all. And still, you rose. You kept loving. You kept growing. That's what matters. There's something especially cruel about the kind of manipulation that wears the mask of love. It's not loud. It's not dramatic. In fact, it often sounds like care, looks like protection, but it's not. It's control, wrapped up in concern, laced with, I'm just trying to help. And the scariest part? You don't even realize it's happening until you've already made yourself small enough to fit into someone else's idea of who you should be. I didn't see it at first. Of course I didn't. Because when someone close to you tells you they're worried, that they just want what's best, how can you not trust that? Especially when they've been in your life for years, maybe even since the beginning. Maybe they're a parent, a partner, a best friend. Someone whose opinion shaped you before you even had your own. But over time, something starts to feel off. You bring up an idea, a new direction you want to take in life, and instead of excitement, you're met with hesitation, not outright rejection. That would be too obvious. No, it's more subtle than that. It's the gentle questioning of your choices, the quiet undermining of your confidence. Are you sure? Isn't that a bit risky? I just don't want you to get hurt. You nod, you smile, you thank them, because it sounds like love. But you shrink a little each time, and then it hits you. This isn't about your safety, it's about their comfort. Carl Jung once said that some people fear your growth because it reminds them of everything they're too afraid to pursue. And the only way they know how to cope with that fear is by keeping you close. But not too free. Not too bold, not too big, because if you outgrow the space they've put you in, they'll lose their grip. They'll lose the version of you that made them feel secure. So they offer you golden cages, advice that sounds wise but keeps you stagnant, warnings dressed up as wisdom. They talk about realism, about being careful. But what they really mean is, don't change too much. Don't become someone I can't recognize. Don't fly so high that you forget who I need you to be. I remember someone once told me, I just want to make sure you don't make a mistake. And for a long time, I believed them, until I realized I had stopped trying at all. Not because I didn't believe in my dreams, but because I was more afraid of disappointing them than I was of failing. That realization shattered something inside me. Because love isn't supposed to hold you back. Real love, real care says, I believe in you, even when I don't understand you. It says, I'll be here if you fall, but I won't clip your wings just to keep you on the ground. When I finally broke free from that subtle control, I felt grief and liberation at the same time. Grief for the years I spent dimming myself, for the choices I didn't make, for the roads I didn't walk. But liberation too, because I saw clearly, maybe for the first time, that I didn't need permission to become who I already was. I started questioning every should that had been placed on me, every expectation that felt more like a chain than a guide. And I began to listen, really listen, to the part of me that had been whispering beneath all the noise. You know what you want. You always have. If you've ever felt that, like you're constantly second-guessing yourself, like you're waiting for someone's nod before taking a step, please hear this. You're allowed to choose your own path, even if it makes someone else uncomfortable, even if it means letting go of the people who only supported the watered-down version of you. You don't owe anyone your stagnation. You don't owe anyone your silence. You don't owe anyone a version of yourself that makes them feel in control. What you owe is to your own soul, to your own life, to your own damn truth. And once you claim it, they might say you've changed, that you're selfish, that you're different. Let them. Because if loving yourself looks like rebellion to them, maybe they were never rooting for your freedom in the first place. I think the hardest part came after the clarity, after I saw it, all of it, the manipulation, the false support, the hidden envy. The space around me felt hollow, not because it was empty, but because I could finally see who was really there and who wasn't. People I once felt so connected to suddenly felt like strangers. Conversations felt rehearsed, laughs felt forced, and I realized I had built my life around proximity, not presence. It's a disorienting thing, waking up in your own relationships. Like stepping out of a dream you didn't know you were in. You look around and ask yourself, how did I miss this? How did I keep letting this happen? But the truth is, you didn't miss it. You survived it. You endured it. You adapted. You convinced yourself it was normal, because that's what we do when love and pain get twisted together. We make sense of the mess. We try to turn broken glass into stained windows. Carl Jung spoke about individuation, the process of becoming who we truly are by integrating what we've rejected, ignored, or feared. And sometimes the most painful part of that journey isn't facing the shadow inside us. It's facing the shadows cast by the people around us. It's seeing, with brutal honesty, that some of the most consistent pain in our lives came from those we were most loyal to. And then, what? What do you do with that truth? At first, I froze. I felt paralyzed between wanting to protect myself and not wanting to hurt anyone. I kept telling myself, maybe I'm overreacting. Maybe I should just stay quiet. Maybe it's not worth losing people over. But every time I silenced myself to keep someone else comfortable, a little piece of me disappeared. So I stopped. I stopped justifying behavior that drained me. I stopped hoping people would suddenly become who I needed them to be. I stopped trying to rewrite their stories just so mine wouldn't feel so painful. Instead, I took inventory. I looked at every relationship in my life and asked two simple questions. Does this connection strengthen me or weaken me? Does it bring peace or confusion? And the answers, they were sobering. Some people had never really been there, not fully. They were around because I made it easy, because I didn't challenge the dynamic, because I allowed the silence. But once I started speaking up, setting boundaries, changing the rhythm, many of them faded, quietly, without a fight, as if my growth was the inconvenience they were waiting to avoid. And even though it hurt, it was also the cleanest kind of freedom I've ever felt. Because here's the thing, when you stop twisting yourself to fit where you don't belong, the right people start to recognize you. The ones who love you not for your compliance, but for your clarity. The ones who meet your energy, not compete with it. The ones who aren't threatened by your light because they're standing in their own. But before that, you have to get through the ache of disillusionment. You have to grieve the version of your life that was built on pretending. You have to sit with the loneliness of letting go, knowing that some bridges don't need mending, they need burning. And as you watch the smoke rise, you'll feel something strange. Relief. Not because you didn't care, but because you finally started caring about yourself more. It always comes down to this moment, the quiet one. The one where you sit alone, maybe late at night, maybe in the middle of a day that suddenly feels too still, and you realize no one is coming to rescue you, not the people who said they cared, not the ones who said they'd never leave, not even the version of you that once believed love meant never letting go. It's just you now, you and the truth, and strangely, that's not as lonely as it sounds, because once the noise dies down, once the distractions fall away, you can finally hear yourself. Not the voice shaped by fear or guilt or what someone else needed you to be. Your voice, the one that was there before you started shrinking to fit. The one that says, "This is who I am, and I don't need to apologize for it anymore." I remember sitting in that moment, heart raw, spirit tired, but something inside me, something honest, whispering, "You're allowed to want more, you're allowed to walk away, you're allowed to stop explaining yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you." Carl Jung wrote about the shadow, yes, but he also wrote about wholeness, about how becoming ourselves means owning everything we are, the light and the dark, the rage and the tenderness, the wildness and the calm, not edited, not filtered, not reduced. So I stopped reducing myself. I stopped showing only the parts that felt safe or digestible. I started saying no without a follow-up sentence, started celebrating myself without waiting for someone else's applause, started protecting my energy like it was sacred, because it is. And that changed everything. People will try to make you feel guilty for that, for drawing lines, for letting them go, for no longer playing a role in their story. They'll call you distant, selfish, cold. But what they really mean is, you stopped being easy to control. And you know what? That's okay. You're not here to be easy. You're here to be whole. So let them think what they want. Let them gossip. Let them misunderstand. Let them walk away if they need to. You're not living for their approval anymore. You're living for your peace, for your power, for the version of you that finally gets to take up space without apology. And that version of you, she's not fragile, she's not confused, she's not bitter, she's free. And now that you've seen the truth, really seen it, there's no going back. You might still wobble. You might still have moments where you miss the old dynamics, the old comfort, the old lies, but you'll never unlearn what you've come to understand. Your life is yours. Your light is yours. Your path is yours. And the people meant to walk it with you, they won't dim you, they'll honor you. So here you are, not broken, not lost, but reborn. Not because someone saved you, but because you did.